when Deb Ayers was here, I'll bring her presentation up, but it's in PDF form. She'll be able to go through it.
Okay. Yeah, you can. Okay.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, please stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Please join me in a moment of silence in memory of Dorothy Sarday. Dorothy started her teaching career at LED Parker Elementary School. So it looks like we have some new persons in the Carol and Aidan, are you going to recite as our source?
Assume good intentions, strive for consensus, exemplify respect, and listen to hear and understand.
Thank you. And 5, if we recite in the line, for everyone in here? Thank you. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, Cortland and Large City Schools District Board of Education, to the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion? Okay, thank you.
I have a question on 6.2 and 6.3.
Which part of 6.3, so open the correct one?
6.2 is special resolutions and 6.3 is financial.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was just wondering which is for training.
No, that's a good one, but nobody knew what 6.3 is.
I am beating it up because we're doing the right. What are you asking for?
We're going to do this.
Yeah, this is just
Yeah, but if I want to ask a question, I have to have a children are under consent, and then I can ask you questions. Correct? I've just located it. Okay.
You want 6.2 taken out of
I have one question on 6.2 and one question on 6.3.
so it sounds like the discussion is motion to move 6.2 or 6.3 out of the.
Into
Is that
business.
correct?
It's all approved.
Right, that would be a motion to the board from the support. Sounds like a motion to the board to remove 6.2.
No.
All right, but then it has, the board has to vote on it. Yeah, for change.
Yes, that is correct. Janet, you have this sheet.
I've got it.
You've got that, okay.
I do. I just
So-
had to locate it.
So 6.2 will become 9.8.
So the motion is to make 6.2 9.8.
Yep, under new business.
6.2.
And then 6.3 will do 9.9.
9.9, okay. What else is left in the consent? Approval of minutes.
Brett, did you make the motion?
No, they can.
Okay.
Janet, so that will be in move 6.2. We'll end a second and a vote. And then we'll do it again for 6.3. And then we'll finish the first motion to keep the rest of the agenda as it is.
I'll make a motion to go close to 9899. Need a second.
I'll second.
I was doing this. So, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? The motion is carried.
We have to do that for 6.3 again? I think Joe made both.
Joe did make those.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Just-
And at least when we go into exec, you can square it all away and we scrap it.
Yes, I'll do my best, yes. I will do that.
So. Do we need to do this one?
So now we have just all in favor of the agenda as it stands.
With the revisions.
Yes. That's all in favor of the agenda. Now,
And. Alrighty, so now we are going into executive session.
Janet,
vote on
I thought we did. I thought we had Brett and Joe.
No, that was to change it.
Okay.
And now to approve what has been.
You want to approve the revised agenda?
this is a little confusing. So Brett and Joe did do the original motion and second, so we just have to have all in favor to keep it as revised.
Yep.
So this is the same thing, right?
Yeah, just all in favor is all you need.
So all in favor of the approved agenda?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
You have that? Yes. In accordance with Public Officers Law, Section 96, Subdivision 1, I would like to call for executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person and legal matters. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Same two?
Yes.
Brett and Jim.
Yeah, on a roll.
Keeping this thing moving.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, and the time,
6:11.
very fast on the comment.
Well, actually, this one does. What this one does is to not go for your opponent. So this one, just a little bit more simple. So we take these little, you ever go to like a Chinese restaurant, take the cat that waves their arms? So this is, so you turn the cat into a machine. It has the weapon over here, and we would attach it to the this. And then you could drive it around. Now it's not attached, so it's going to fall right over. But, and it's way too much. Your mission is to drive at your foot and knock each other over.
All right, I would like to call for a motion to reconvene in open session. May I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That's right. Big.
Abstained?
That's right. Seniors.
So moved. Please welcome Stephanie Eddy to recognize our Tiger Paw Award recipient. Right over here, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Katerina Fabian is consistently high work ethic and exceptional organizational skills ensure that our IEP meetings run smoothly and efficiently. She consistently provides positive encouragement to staff, students, and families, creating an environment where the team works together to create the best solution for the students. Her compassionate support and commitment to her job makes a meaningful difference every single day, and we are grateful for the profound impact it has on our students' success.
Julie's going to take a picture.
Take a picture right next to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just make sure it looks good. Yep. Oh, wait, stop, your eyes are closed. Hold on. This way. All right. Thank you.
Alicia, are there any requests to address the board?
Yes, we have two for this first session. The first one is Don Chu regarding the consultant's report.
And who's the second?
The second one is Jeff Wolf
Okay.
regarding transparency.
Thank you. I was pleased to see the consultant's report in the agenda, and I'd like to make these three suggestions. First, that you post all three of Deb Ayer's reports. They show that you're serious about reducing expenses and have ideas for accomplishing that. Second, to discuss the reports with staff and the community. This will correct any gaps in Deb Ayer's logic and build trust with both community and staff. And third, promise to improve and perhaps embark on a 5-year plan to raise graduation rates from 77% to 95%. Place all grads in higher ed or good jobs. And the third, promise to raise grade 3 through 8 proficiency in English and math from 25% and 33% to 50%. So to repeat, post Deb Ayer's reports for all to see, discuss the reports with staff and community, and promise to improve, perhaps embarking on a 5-year plan to accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know where to come here.
Jeff Wolf is next.
I'd like to hand out the paperwork before I speak. Is that okay?
Would you like me to hand that out for you?
We can have that. Who's the board members? Board members? We can share one. You board member?
Yes.
Board members? You already know.
I'm not a board member.
You guys are the students, right?
Yes.
I want everybody to take a gander at those photographs, right? My name is Jeffrey Wolf, and I am the sole legal custodial parent to my son Lincoln Wolf, who has been removed from the school once before, from this district, due to the continued misconduct on the part of this district. I then placed them in Truxton, where Truxton did the same exact thing that Cortland City School District did. I was then forced to put my son back into the school district, where Bob told me with open arms that he'd welcome back anytime. All right? Well, how can you be welcomed back with open arms when your child continues to be neglected and abused? You've informed the school district of these things that are taking place to your child, and then the school informs you that they're going to be transparent. And then there's no transparency. Well, I informed Jen Block the day before my son started school that anybody that comes to the school, regardless of who they are, I want to be notified of who they are, why they're coming to speak to my child, what their name is, what documentation they have to present to the school to speak to my child, and I want to know what's happening, right? Well, Mr. Williams sat in on a meeting that my child had that I didn't even know about, because the school lied to my face, and lied to my face after I had a meeting with Miss Maniaci, Miss Bukella, Miss Iverson, and Jen Block, as I sat there and I told them and showed them what was happening to my child, and that I needed to be informed about who comes to the school to speak to him, because the Cortland County Family Court, I'm on judge number 3, attorney number 9. My son's an attorney for child number 3 in Cortland County Family Court that I'm trying to remove. And he's on his 3rd appellate attorney for child, where each one of these people have denied this happening to my kid. And Cortland City School District did the same thing. If you turn in there's somewhere in the middle, there's a page that shows that Miss, what is her name? Kaiser, Emily Kaiser, she denied my child being abused. When my son told her on September 27th of 2023 that he was being punched by his brother while being left home, Ms. Kaiser informed me that she had a talk with my son about lying to adults. 2 weeks before that, my son was illegally handed over to an unapproved emergency contact by Phyllis Klump, who retired early because she was neglecting and abusing children at various schools, screaming and yelling at them and grabbing them by their arms and dragging them down hallways. And I know about this because I've spoken to many parents about what Phyllis Klump did to those children there, all right? And Emily Kaiser, I believe, is still working in the district. I don't know how. Needless to say, my son had an IEP meeting, evaluation, where he was deemed to be intellectually capable and very smart. There are things in this thing that were discussed about my son telling the psychologist that he was being harmed after telling the psychologist that he was never harmed. Conflicting stories only because the therapist, the psychologist, dove deeper. Needless to say, Christopher Williams sat in on a meeting, I still do not know the date, where he sat in with my son's new attorney for child, Michelle Rosen, I don't know how to say her last name, and I was informed a week later through a brief that my son is not intellectually capable of understanding what is happening to him. And she stated that she's going to submit her own opinion and make a stance that what I'm saying is not happening. And Christopher Williams sat in on that meeting. My son, I finally asked him after I got confirmation from Jen Block, who still refused to give me the name and still refused to tell me the date of when she spoke to my child, that my child told me that the person asked who he wanted to live with, and he said, you, Dad. He goes, you, Dad? And I go, oh, okay. And he goes, yeah, and I told her why, because my mom's mean. Now, I don't know about you, but those photographs prove that. The documents in here also have the IEP where it states that I'm the fun dad. I'm not the fun dad, I'm the safe dad. I'm the dad that does everything that my child needs to protect him in a world that is not protecting him, all right? And I'm just confused about how a principal, while the district strongly believes in transparency and communication with parents, the district cannot also guarantee specific notice for every situation in which a student may be interviewed by an employee or a visitor complying with the district's visitor policy. And I still haven't been able to find that. But if Jen Block tells me that, and then I find out 2 weeks later from a brief that my son is not intellectually capable of understanding what's going on, that's a little concerning, especially since Christopher Williams supposedly sat in on this meeting and was a witness to it. I'm just really concerned about the transparency that I was told was going to happen, and it didn't.
Mr. Wolf, I hate
Thank you.
to
Nope, I was-
interrupt you, but
I appreciate that.
time has passed.
Thank you. So please review the documents.
Thank you. Okay. So now we have the presentation for the new course proposal, Makerspace. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So we are here to discuss the proposal of the Makerspace Lab course in the Cortland Junior Senior High School. The idea would be that this is a elective credit course that would be offered starting next academic year as a 5th period course. With the master schedule is already worked out to include it. The thought would be that this class would be an introduction of sorts to the offerings that the tech program has and will continue to offer in the future. Essentially a method for students to get their feet wet in many different puddles before diving into something that truly interests them. I believe that this course would be a very valuable addition. First off, it definitely is financially responsible. It is not requiring additional funding necessarily, negligible amounts. It fits in need for our tech standards, our computer science standards, and most importantly, it rewards the students that use the space responsibly to learn. For 4 or 5 years almost now, which is crazy to think about, staff members, administrators, past and current, and many students have asked for a class to give them credit for what they do. And an actual organized time, because a lot of students struggle to get down there regularly. A lot of kids cut lunch to come down to the Makerspace, and this would be an opportunity for students to not only be allowed to work on their projects that they want to work on, but learn proper skills that are career-ready skills, to be totally honest. A lot of the students that I've been working with the past few years have gone on to pursue different tech avenues, academically or even career-wise. Sai Patel is one of my Makerspace students in the past. Hi, Sai, long time no see. And ultimately, many students have gone on to do things. Alex Sheets, a student who you may know, who used to write for the Cortland Standard for all of his NASA stuff. He met his NASA contacts through the space balloon launch that we did 4 years ago, which was actually inspired by him. A couple of my students are currently looking to go into engineering programs and are building a portfolio based on some of the designs that they have done in the Makerspace. The 3D animatronic that was printed by an 8th grade student, fully designed and printed by him. He did not know he wanted to go into engineering, but lo and behold, here he is. So the course itself would revolve around different entry-level subjects: 3D design, coding, a lot of catch-all, almost sounds buzzwordy. But the hope is to present project-based learning and allow students the opportunity to try their hand at all of these things with proper cooperative projects. It would be structured, much unlike the makerspace, which tends to be very unstructured right now. Having the classroom structure could only benefit them and would allow them to work in an organized manner, in an organized fashion, and learn that sometimes failure is an option, and sometimes you think you love something, but it's not your cup of tea, or sometimes you want to learn something, and it is your cup of tea. I brought props because otherwise I would talk for 20 years. I'm sorry, I never shut up. It's a problem. My students tell me that all the time. Sorry. And ultimately, in of itself, I brought two projects. One that was designed by a high school student, Cortland. She is a artistic individual. She likes to draw, she likes to paint, she loves to do fabric stuff, but never in a million years could you get her to code. And ultimately, this is where the potential problem would come in. Students who take the course might not want to do a certain thing. I don't expect everyone to suddenly become a master coder. That's just not going to happen. But by taking their interests and putting it into this course, we can find a way to make coding work for them. So this is just a tie that she worked on with another student who loves to code, but is artistically not very inclined. So the artistically inclined student went through and sewed essentially wire through the tie into a nice aesthetic pattern and connected all these circuits together. The coding student went through and actually coded it so that way it would do various things depending on what buttons you press and how it would react in different levels of light. One of the projects we're working on now is Battle Cats, where students are going to learn basic soldering skills. Not everyone is going to be a master solderer. Not everyone's going to be able to work on Raspberry Pis, go to Tiger Tech and start fixing, Chromebooks. You guys know that it takes actual, genuine skill set. But the skills that they're going to learn here, my hope is that it will allow them to pursue a career and a path that they want, or pursue classes that align with their interests. And I just rambled, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you, John. Any questions?
Yes, please. Follow up and answer your question.
I already asked this question, so I know, but I think the community would like to know.
Yes.
Does this course qualify for graduation credit?
So currently, it would qualify under our initial proposal an elective credit. So it would benefit toward graduation, yes.
Okay, I think the community needs to know that.
Of course, and I appreciate that, because that was something I was hyping myself up to say for a little bit.
You fired me.
Yeah. So there's, one of the benefits of a course like this is community engagement and community involvement. In the past, we've worked with Syracuse and done some things up in Syracuse for the Maker Fair, which is wonderful. We tried to work with, was it Barry? It was my first year here. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Barry. We were going to build a giant light bright for them, but our tech skills were not the best, and it didn't go the best. But ultimately, the hope is we would like to do, essentially as a final exam. Has anyone heard of Maker Fair? The world's largest show and tell, held in Syracuse every year. The idea of showing off the things that people have built and made and providing STEM interest to just people who come and visit. Holding a mini Maker Fair in Cortland was something I actually brought up during my first interview with Mr. Edwards, no joke. I still remember that part. And mini Maker Fair would essentially be something that we could hold in Cortland High School, in the gym. Free community event. Come in, see the fun things that people are making, show off the stuff that you can make. And ultimately, it's an opportunity to engage in the community, which would be really nice. Sorry, thanks.
Absolutely awesome.
I like it, but
I personally want to thank both John and Melissa for coming and talking to us today. That was absolutely awesome. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Thank you both very much.
sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
Well, looking forward to seeing what we can do.
And now, I would like to welcome Deb Ayers, John Lewinsky, and Jennifer Hecklinger.
Sure.
And if I didn't say your names correctly, I'm so sorry.
We set you up to fail with a couple of those names. So I'm Deb Ayers. Thank you all for giving us the chance to come and share a little bit about our work. Thank you for the opportunity to work with the district. oops, there we go. And I want to make sure I thank these people, because when we go in and we do work with the district, we ask for a lot of data. We gather what we can from various websites outside of that so that we minimize how much people are chasing down for us, but there's still a lot of data that we need from the district. And then there are follow-up questions and clarifications and all of those kinds of things. So these are the folks that we worked directly with, so we want to make sure that we note that and thank them for all of their help in this. The review, you'll see there, it's in 3 parts. I'm going to start with a fiscal review because honestly, as we did the work, that seemed to be what was driving a lot of the rest of the conversation. So I'm going to start with that. I believe you've all seen the reports, or I don't know if you've had a chance, there's a lot of pages there to work your way through all of it, but you have them, I believe. So we are going to do our best to be respectful of your time without feeling like we're flying through this, and try to strike that balance. So if you have questions, I'll say this now in case I forget it later, but if you have questions as you read the report in detail, please feel free to reach out to any of us or to Chris or whomever, and we'll be happy to respond to those if it's something that comes up after tonight.
I don't have a question right now, but to be perfectly honest, I was rather skeptical, and I thoroughly enjoyed going through these reports. There's a lot of information and a lot of hard data, so I appreciate the fact that we have them in front of us.
Well, thank you very much. And we appreciate that, because I will say we don't often get that feedback. We come in, we do our work, we share our work, people say thank you very much, and leave. But to hear that, it's very gratifying, so thank you, Lori, for that.
It was well worth the time.
Thank you.
To read it. Absolutely.
Right, thank you all for that. That means a lot, believe me. I'm going to be as brief as I can and hit these. This is in the fiscal section. One of the things that drives budgets, of course, is enrollment. And so there's a section on enrollment. You've seen declining enrollment. We went back 6 years. Your enrollment during that time has declined by about 11%. And as I did the projections going forward, it's expected to decline an additional 18%. So that is a piece that you will need to be very aware of. Your voters have been very supportive of your budgets, with the obvious 2 exceptions that you're all well aware of. The 2 times where you went out with a budget with asking to exceed the property tax levy limit, and they did not support those. But otherwise, they've been very supportive, some pretty high percentages. The district has done a very good job in establishing reserve funds. The district is well covered. As you know, reserve funds have a very specific purpose, and there are rules around how they're funded and how they're spent. And the district has done a very good job over time of setting those things up so that they are there in place of, basically in place of emergencies or unforeseen situations. And those have been well established. However, they've been, the last year, you did dip into them a bit more aggressively than in previous years. So that's, that's a yellow flag. That's something you need to pay attention to. Honestly, this is the one that made me flinch the most. For those of you that don't know my background, I spent 34 years in business administration in schools. So when I saw this, I flinched a little bit, candidly. This is something that for a few years you ran right around that $500,000 mark, you inched up a little bit, but then in last year, and let me make a quick note here, the year that you see on this slide is the year in which the funds were generated, because the fund balance that you can use is money left over from the prior year budget. So to use a concrete example there, the $2.3 million that was generated in the 24-25 budget is what you used to help fund your 25-26 budget. So if you're confused about the numbering, that may be why. So this, frankly, is not a sustainable pattern to use that amount of fund balance over time to support your budgets. A few other things. Budget appropriations have increased over the past 3 years pretty rapidly. That's no surprise. These are trends that we're seeing across New York State. Health insurance, all the usual suspects. Negotiated salary increases, more recently some energy rate increases. In your case, part of the 9.1 was some debt service that came on. There's offsetting building aid for that, but there's reasons behind it. But it still is increasing at a pretty rapid rate. The full value property tax rate, that's not the rate that's on your tax bill at home. That's based on assessments, but this is something that, what this says to us when the full value property tax rate declines, simply put, the property values are increasing at a rate greater than your levy, okay? A piece of data that we look at. Debt service, just like your mortgage at home, as debt drops off, new debt comes on in a school district, and those are years where there are significant changes there. And the next slide will tell it with a picture, is that I put together using some conservative assumptions. You will experience a pretty significant revenue shortfall over the next few years. And just make sure I don't skirt anything. So this, I think, it tells the picture, I guess. In 25-26, the first line, there's your total budget, your revenue matches your budget, that's good. Now those are your revenue sources. You have a tax levy, you used appropriated fund balance, you use some reserves, you have state aid, and then you have a bucket of other, that miscellaneous things, Medicaid reimbursement, pilot payments, interest earnings, things like that that are a small fraction of your budget. So I started there. Just wanted to see what this looked like. So I applied a projection factor for your budget of 2%, which is a pretty low number if you remember what the last few years have been. Maybe that's not even a realistic number, but that's what I chose to use. So obviously your revenue has to match your appropriation. So I said, all right, let's take the levy, and we'll say that we're going to put a 2% increase on your levy in each of the next 4 years. So that is, Chris, has this got a pointer? Oops, maybe not. That's okay. No worries. So the 1, 2, 3, fourth column is the levy. Let's skip over the yellow column for a minute. The reserves I've left alone because to spend reserves, there needs to be a particular purpose for that. So I just said, all right, we're not going to project any increases there. We're going to leave that flat. We're not going to reduce it either. So that, maybe that's a challenge right there. And then state aid, who knows? I put a 1% factor on that, which I don't think is terribly unrealistic. It might be more, but it might be less. And then on the others, I said, all right, let's figure 1% increase. The point of all this exercise was to show what's going to happen to your reliance on that appropriated fund balance if those assumptions work. And that's what's in the yellow column there in front of you for 26-7, 7-8, 8-9, and 29-30. You can see, I guess the best way to say it is that all of the ways in which you can generate revenue are not keeping pace with what you need for a pretty minimal increase in expenditures. That's a problem. And let me say again, you are not the only district in town that's dealing with this kind of thing. I've worked with several in the last few weeks that are experiencing that. The state aid is just not keeping pace with what's happening on the expense side. But it's real, and it's one of those things that unfortunately we all have to deal with. As you all know, again, if you think about your budgets at home, there's really 3 things you can do if you've got to balance a budget. You can reduce expenditures, you can increase revenues, or some combination of both of those things. And generally speaking, what we hope and try to do is a combination of both of those things. So with that in mind, that's really what drove these recommendations on the fiscal portion. And again, I'm not going to read the action steps to you, except there's a couple I do want to highlight, but I will walk through these recommendations. First one is that the district exhaust every opportunity to maximize state aid. particular focus on expense-driven aid, such as excess cost aid, BOCES aid, transportation aid. Do everything you can possibly do to maximize those aid pieces, because that's not coming out, at least not out directly, of your district residents' pocket. Second one, you've got to do something to reduce that reliance on fund balance in your annual spending plan. That's about as direct as I can be, because what you're doing right now is just not sustainable. You're going to run out of money in the long run. The reserve funds, pay attention to the reserve funds. As I said, you've done a very nice job of establishing them, protecting the district, using them. Be careful about how you use them going forward, and make sure, this is the one I did want to highlight, make sure that you're not using them for routine operating expenses, because that can be a very slippery slope, and was not the intent of them. They are there for those exceptions and something that you couldn't or didn't budget for. And make sure, again, you'll hear this plan idea multiple times. Be intentional about developing a financial plan, whether it be about the reserves or a bigger picture one for the district. I think at some point here soon, you're going to need to reduce expenditures. You're going to see Jen will talk a little bit about some of the findings and recommendations in the instructional program side. There may be some opportunities for efficiencies in that area, but again, the current level of expenditures and what you're dealing with for revenue just don't match up. They're not keeping pace. This is the multi-year fiscal plan. I already spoke about that really as it relates to reserves, but just in general, take a look at that. And one of the things I did mention in one of those action steps was you may not be able to dig yourself out of this hole in 1 year. It may be a multi-year process, but you've got to chip away at it. And part of that plan could be looking at what's on a multi-year game plan here. And then lastly, for the fiscal section, that if you do choose, and that is entirely within your right to do, but if you choose to go out and propose a budget where you're going to need to exceed the property tax levy limit, then think about how you're going to engage those voters and to help you get different outcomes than you have in the 2 prior years where you've not been successful with that. And as I thought about that, I think the challenge perhaps may be the non-voters and how you bring them in and combat the ones that you know will always show up for the sole purpose of voting no. I mean, they're there in every single district. And that is their right to do that. But how do you engage people in a way that you've not been able to in the past when you've attempted to exceed the tax levy limit? With that, I guess, Chris, do you want to do questions at the end? Hold questions, perhaps? We can do it after each section. We can hold them till the end. Hold on to them? Okay, I see heads nodding. Your facilities review. John is standing over here. John really had the lead on this. He and I worked on it together. We came out, we toured your district, each of the buildings in your district, and generally speaking, this was very clear-cut to me, to us, that the facilities, as indicated on the building condition survey, are all rated in good shape. They're pretty well maintained across the board, generally speaking. They've got, while enrollment has declined, as we noted in that earlier slide, some of that space, people do sprawl, but some of that space is used with a lot of your student support services that you may not have had 5 years ago. Some of the mental health services and other various support services have kind of filled in some of those gaps. We do think that you may have some opportunity for improving the efficiency of the room usage in the junior senior high school as we walk through there. Now, granted, we're there for about this much. You know, one day in one particular week, we're walking through at a particular time. So that's a very small slice of, you know, what may be happening over time. But I think there are some opportunities there that you could take a look at. Parker has been used as swing space, as you all know, during the Barry renovation. And I think it will be very important for you to make sure that once you get the kids back in Barry, and that's in one of these recommendations, I'm getting ahead of myself, that the payments, any of the payments to Parker cease, because that's, again, if you think about your fiscal challenges, that's one thing, from what I can see, you really don't need to be doing. So that will lead me to the recommendation number 1, which is basically what I just said. And then the second recommendation is really to just examine at a deeper dive than we can do how you're using that space at the junior senior high school, and are there ways to identify better use of that space. And there's also, last semester, we really didn't talk too much about it, but there's also operational efficiencies as it relates to the cleaning process and maintenance of rooms. If you're using them less, then that will take less time, and so on and so forth, funneling down through that. So good stuff on the facilities. Everything looked good, really. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Jen over here, and I'll stop there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Heckathorn. I took the lead on the instructional program review with support from Deb. Deb mentioned 3 ways, right? 3 ways you improve your financial status. You get more revenue, you reduce expenditures, or you do some combination of the 2. I work in the grant world, which is one way you could improve your revenue. It's a really unstable way to do so at the moment. And so when we think about revenue, you know, taxes, pilots, things like that, grants is probably not going to help us to get out of this situation all that much, which really leaves cutting expenditures. School districts are 75 to 80% staffing costs, and so I'm here to show you that there are some places instructionally where we could look to make up some of that ground. I hate that I have to say that. I hate talking about cutting expenditures, cutting programs, cutting teachers. Nobody wants to talk about that. So that being said, you're not currently operating at a bare bones spot in terms of instructional programming, so there are opportunities to do so. So I'm going to go through some of those. The question that I asked myself as we worked through this was, where are the opportunities to realize fiscal efficiencies in instructional programming without sacrificing quality and achievement, right? We still want what's best for our kids. The first thing that I noticed in looking at our instructional program, the thing that stood out the most were the special education rates here in Cortland. They have increased 8% since 2015, 2016. That is far outpacing your local peers in Cortland County, but it's also outpacing all other small city school districts in New York State. So when we look at that, that says, okay, we've got this rising student need. What can we look at in terms of the model for staffing? Is staffing as efficient as it could be? Are there some opportunities there? Other questions that we asked, is the district following its own policies or practices around class sizes? How are course offerings impacting teacher schedules? And are there other areas where staffing seems out of sync? So I'll go through these recommendations. I'll hit some harder than others. This slide to me is the most important. If you take one recommendation and run with it, it's 2 actually, but they're around special education. Really the idea is to engage a special education consultant to conduct a comprehensive review of service delivery models would be money well spent. I think the return on the investment would be high. Kristen was fabulous to work with in this. I know she's fairly still new to the role, and I think would really welcome some support there The integrated co-teach model is complex. It's a lot of staffing, it's staffing heavy. And so if there are opportunities there to work with a consultant to think about what is our model affording us, what would a different model look like, how would we make that transition, I think that would be really a good first step. Simultaneous to that, we need to develop a multi-year plan to reduce our reliance on costly BOCES special education placements. The way we do that is by bringing programs back home. We've done that over the past couple of years. We've got 2 small classes over the past 2 years that we've been able to start. We need to look for opportunities to do more of that. Bringing those students back into the district will ultimately save costs. It is easier said than done because we have to match grade levels, we have to match ages, we have to match disability status and needs, but that should definitely be a goal for Cortland. The next couple go together. This is about looking at right-sizing instructional staffing by looking at class sizes, course offerings, section utilization. In the appendices of the instructional report, you'll see a couple of tables about section sizes. They're kind of all over the place. Section sizes are much higher with the exception of one content area, at the junior high than they are at the high school. We offer a ton of electives with really small section sizes. We need to think about the best way to offer those, to continue to give kids opportunities, while also, word of the night, looking for efficiencies. We also need to make sure that we're applying our informal class size practice consistently. We don't have an official policy in Cortland about class sizes. We have an informal practice, but we're not quite following it right now. Class sizes are a little lower than what our informal practice says they should be. If we really want to be efficient and maximize our financial ability, we need to work up to those class sizes. The next one, again, establishing clear decision rules. If we have X number of kids, we run a course. If we don't have X number of kids, we don't run that course. And then reevaluating the scale and structure of the dual credit offerings. I believe the number that sticks in my head was something like 34 courses that are dual credit in the high school right now, meaning students can earn college credits alongside the high school credit. That's a lot. I know we have the early college high school grant. We want to be able to continue that, but there's got to be a way to offer courses on an every other year schedule or to help kids think about this course or that course. We just don't have the financial stability right now to offer everything to everyone. I used the analogy at the Guiding Coalition meeting. When you're in fiscal strain, you've got to kind of like sink into core mission. What is our core mission? What can we afford to offer right now? And then kind of work our way back up from there. When teachers are teaching sections that are under-enrolled, or teachers are teaching sections of dual credit course offerings, that pulls them away from being available to teach those core courses that we need for kids to graduate, which means we then have to backfill other schedules, have more staff, right? So it's really just about efficiency. It is very clear that teacher collaborative time is important to this district. The district administration believes that it is already and will continue to be a way that we improve student achievement. I think that's wonderful. We've got to think about how we provide that collaboration time that makes good use of our teacher time. In some cases, what we're doing now is offering double special periods to students, especially in the early elementary grade levels, which just means then that we've got to have more specials teachers to cover those periods, right? So again, how do we provide teacher collaboration time and meet those instructional goals, but also be really realistic about what our fiscal constraints are. I stuck one in there, I have to, about elementary science and social studies. Guys, the research is really, really clear. High quality science and social studies instruction with good curriculum leads to better ELA and math outcomes. We've got to figure a way to make that a real priority. And I say that to every district, and very few districts take me up on it. But just know, elementary kids really need really good science and social studies. We've got to get our teacher union to work with us a little bit on some contractual things. When we look at how our contract helps with flexibility at the secondary level, there are two things that stand out. The first is that we're limited. Teachers are only allowed to have 3 preps or teach 3 different courses. That limits our flexibility in our schedule. And then you've got this thing in your teacher's contract, it says 6 student contact periods. That's really different language than I'm used to seeing. But essentially what it does is it sets up any period where teachers are interacting with students to be the equivalent of a full instructional period, right? So it could be I'm tutoring a couple of kids a period, that counts on my load the same way that teaching 6 sections of 10th grade ELA with 25 students each would. And that there's some room there, I think, to work with your teachers union on that. And then this last one here on this slide is really about building those systems to make sure that we're looking at staffing efficiency every year. What are the procedures we'll put in place to make sure that that happens? The district asked us to think about grade level reconfiguration. Specifically, what would happen if we moved the 6th grade to the junior high? What would that get us? As consultants, we don't think fiscally it's going to get you too much. We think instructionally, you could have some improved teacher collaboration, especially 6 through 8. However, what we've seen is other issues crop up. Certifications are different for 6th grade versus 7 through 12. Contract language is often different for elementary versus secondary, and sometimes that causes unforeseen problems. So what we say about this one is if that's the way you want to go, just flush out those problems first. Think about really how that's going to impact and whether it's going to solve or create more problems. However, if you decide not to do that and to leave the 7-12 system the way it is, we think there are opportunities for more efficiencies there, right? For instance, not saying you need to do this, but if you cut a 12th grade ELA teacher, could 7th grade ELA teachers pick up sections of 12th grade ELA, even though they're technically 2 different schools, right? There's some ways to build some efficiencies in there. And then the last one here is monitoring athletics and extracurricular programs. Really the questions we want to be asking ourselves around this one is, what are we offering in terms of extracurriculars? Who's taking them up? And most importantly, who are we missing, right? Which kids aren't involved in anything that we could get some more engagement with if we reconfigured what those extracurriculars looked like. We're going to open it up to questions, but I think in terms of if you have to go down the reducing expenditure road, we would advocate for some shared sacrifice. There's no one way. It's not all going to come out of special ed. It's not all going to come out of athletics, right? I feel like everybody's got to feel a little bit of that fiscal pinch so that it's a shared understanding of the problem and a shared momentum towards a solution.
So with that, we rushed a little bit, but we still took a little more than our intended time. Are there questions that you would like to ask at this point?
I just want to say over again, you did such a great job with your explanations that if you take the time and sit there and read it, it's right there, and I compliment you.
Thank you, we appreciate that. That's a goal we have, is to make it understandable for anybody that reads it in the community, on the board, and make it pretty simple to understand. So we appreciate your comments, Lorianne. Okay, then we will let you carry on. So thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Next is our budget presentation. Now
share? Yes. Budget presentation.
Okay, I want to echo the board's thanks for Deb and her team. They really did a great job looking at all those three areas, and we commend them for their work for us. And as you can imagine, it's going to take some time to go through those recommendations and then see what we can do to help our budget scenario this year. So we'll thank the team for the time to come down to present that to you. To continue the budget presentations, so on the budget calendar we have slated for today the payroll and benefits side. As you can imagine, there's still a lot of work to be done in the expense side of the budget, as was just mentioned. But what I have presented here is currently moving forward from this year to next year, so no changes. So as we look through the budget into the upcoming months, this will change a little bit, but we'll keep you apprised as we go through this process. But as you can see here, the green bar is what we're talking about tonight, which is the payroll and benefits, which is most of our budget, about 2/3 of our budget tonight. So we'll start with payroll projections into different categories. We'll talk about the retirement projections in terms of what percent increases we're expecting there. The governor's runs to come out recently, so I want to talk a little bit about where those projections are at the moment, and then where is the budget currently stand in terms of our revenue expense, in terms of our budget gap. So we're in the process in the expense side. I still have all the budget requests into the master spreadsheet, so we're going to be looking at that, and especially at the non-staffing pieces, really going and focusing on those pieces, see what we can do in terms of bringing those expenses down. There were some updates to workers' comp, retirement employer contributions, health insurance, and some contractual lines, mainly because a lot of these things we know some percentage increases at this point in time. In terms of revenue, we had the budget workshop with the board recently, a couple weeks ago. As was discussed at that point in time, we would like to start considering a tax levy override. So in the budget right now, I do have the 7.5% increase that we discussed at the workshop. That's something just to keep in mind, because we need to think about a revote plan in terms of where the tax cap ends up being in the future. I did include the initial stated calculations. I didn't make any changes to miscellaneous revenues at this point in time, but that's my next step in the revenue side, to really look at that side, make sure we can maximize that as best we can. Upon the board's recommendation as well at the workshop, I did lower the reserve usage in terms of where we are at the budget right now to start being a little more conservative. And as typical, we don't have any fund balance allocations. That's something we're looking at as we approach the end of the year. Where is that fund balance going to end up? What can we appropriate into next year? As we go through this process, it won't be finalized until the board adopts the budget in April. But we're going to continue to review those budget requests, look at those expense lines, look at those revenue lines, look at those state aid projections, and we should have some finalized state tax cap calculations soon. That's going to be the next presentation in February. So we're talking about payroll. There's a couple of different categories. What I'm going to show you are the 25-26 current budgeted amounts for each of these categories, as well as what we're projecting for next year at the current without any changes. So in terms of contractual salaries, that's all of our staff that we have. We have $22.3 million in salaries. We're projecting a $1 million increase with our current contractual increases. Subs and overtime, we currently budgeted $754,000. That's both internal subs, external subs, overtime for our non-instructional staff. We're seeing a slight increase in that, mainly because of rate increases for overtime and increases in rates for subs. And the other category are all of our stipends. That's our claim forms, that's our co-curriculars, our athletic stipends. Those are considered part of payroll because we have our staff do that work. So we are seeing some decrease in that little area. As we're starting to look at the expense side, the non-staffing piece, I'm starting to see some of those reductions in those areas. So that brings our total payroll projections right now increasing about $1 million for next year. About 4.19% increase. Last year at this time, it's right around that point, 4.29%. So we're right on par with where we were last year in terms of payroll projection increases. For the retirement projections, for everyone we have in payroll, we have to, depending on if they're non-instructional or instructional, have an employer contribution for those payroll salaries that are paid. So the employer has to contribute as well. The employee contributes and the employer contributes. And those are always a percentage of the payroll. And they're of different periods of time. So the ERS is on April through March time frame, and the TRS, the teachers instructional, is on a July through June time frame. But there are a certain percentage of payroll. So you can see in this current year, 16.5%, that's increasing, expected to be for ERS to 17.6%. So that's a $188,000 increase there. For TRS, we're actually seeing a decrease. Right now, it's actually a range of 8.25 to 8.75%. So I put the cap maximum there, so we can't go any lower, any higher than that, the TRS instructional payroll. So that would be a little bit of a decrease. So we do see some balancing a little bit. Overall, for the employer contributions, about $119,000 increase. It's 4.33% increase. Last year was about 1.3% increase. The other benefits that we have in the budget, another thing that we have to pay for every dollar we pay in payroll is FICA Medicare, which is Social Security. That's 7.65% of what we pay in salary. So this year we currently budgeted $2 million. We're currently looking at salaries for next year, $1.9 million. Now one reason why this year's is higher than what we're projecting next year is because we're looking at staffing right now, positions we don't have filled, and we're assuming that we're not going to be filling those positions right now. So that is a little bit of a decrease in terms of the Social Security piece. We are part of the Workers' Comp Consortium. That consortium is fiscally healthy right now, and actually every district is seeing a decrease in the premiums in terms of those payments. Unemployment, as you can imagine, if we're talking about staffing this year, we had to plan for unemployment costs, so I did increase that side of the budget a little bit just to compensate for potential unemployment claims. And for health insurance, the health consortium that we're part of hasn't officially adopted their increases on premiums just yet, but right now they're looking at a possible 10.5% increase in premiums for next year. Compared to other private sectors that are seeing 15-20% increases, we're still a little bit better off than some of those private sectors, but in the past few years, they've been around 6%. We're starting to see next year being 10.5, the next year after that 10%, next year after that 9.5%. So that's something we're keeping an eye on as well. So we have active insurance and retiree health insurance as well. And the other benefits are retirement incentives and those other pieces to keep our flex plans operational. We're seeing a large increase in that because we're going to expect to see higher number of eligible staff members for retirements next year. Overall, the other benefits, about $1.3 million. It's about 10.9%. Last year was about 3.3%. A lot of those contributing factors are the health insurance increases as well as the increase in the retirement incentives. So that's why you see a 10.9% increase there. So if you encompass all this together, about $39 million of this year's budget is for payroll and benefits. We're anticipating about a $2.5 million increase, which is contributing to some of those large increases in our expenses. Any questions on the payroll benefits before we get to state aid? All right, so as I mentioned, the governor's budget has come out. It still is pending approval with the legislature, so their deadline is April 1st to come to a conclusion. As you probably know from last year, that went well into April, so hopefully we'll have this resolved with the legislator by April 1st. If not, we're going to have to make some assumptions as we finalize the budget this year. But what you can see here are the governor's runs. So these are straight from the governor's runs. These are not currently what I've budgeted because these are based upon what we have in our system for anticipated costs this year. So for instance, like transportation costs, we're not going to fully expend our transportation costs, so we're going to actually get a little less than what the governor's projecting at the moment. So as I look at the state aid runs, I'm going to show you in the next slide, I did decrease that for right now. It's good to be conservative in terms of state aid numbers. But what you'll notice is that foundation aid does see a slight increase, and one thing in the governor's budget right now is she's proposing a minimum of 1% increase in foundation aid this year. So that $237,000 is the 1% increase from this current year. One important thing to know is UPK does show up on the state aid runs. However, that's not part of the general fund. That's part of the special aid fund. So the total you see in the bottom, that's the general fund part of the budget that we're going to be looking at in terms of the revenue side from state aid. So I did include it just for informational purposes. And you can see in this slide how I adjusted that blue column, the governor's run, to get to what I currently have in the budget, which is from 33.8 to 33.2. Another thing to point out right now as well is the building aid numbers that you see there are not what's in the governor's run. And what we did is we used the numbers provided to us from fiscal advisors because they are anticipating those building aid numbers to come in once we have final cost reports submitted. So the governor doesn't know those expenses just yet, but once those cost reports are processed, those aid amounts will increase to those numbers that you see up on the board. So if you're looking at the governor's runs, they are lower on the governor's runs than what I have on here, but this is what we are anticipating. So in terms of foundation aid, as I mentioned, a 1% due minimum increase. So if you're looking at the foundation aid for this year, if you look at what the output reports say for our foundation aid expected for next year, it's actually a decrease of $182,000. A lot of factors that go into that. Because the governor is expecting at least a 1% increase to be approved by the legislature, that does bring us up to $24 million. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on. Ultimately, the legislature can say we're going to do a 3% increase, we're going to do a 0% increase. It's up to the legislature to come to a conclusion of where that increase is going to be. But right now, I'm assuming typically the legislature takes the governor's proposal at the very minimum, so I had the 1% included in there. It's important to also note that all those changes that happened in the formula last year are still in effect. And we can go into a little more depth in the future presentation, because I'm getting more information from state aid planning about the impacts. As you know, we were about $640,000 to the negative for what the formula would have said we had. Like, what does that look like for this year moving forward? But these two areas are really the part that's showing us technically as a less needy district, which means that we have a lower per pupil amount for foundation aid. The other pieces that are changes have little impact on our foundation aid formula, but those 4 changes are still slated to be used into next year's budget. Any questions on state aid, foundation aid?
So the 2 changes that are remaining in effect, you're saying that with the new calculation or the formula that the state is using, we are actually better off than they were saying we were before?
In terms of student population, meaning we're less needy, so we need less support from the state. So,
relative to other districts?
Correct.
Okay.
And relative to the other factors in the formula as well.
Okay.
So in terms of the budget right now, in terms of the revenue budget, so again, what you're going to see here is projected for the current year budgeted amount as well as projected for next year. This is with the 7.5% increase in the tax levy, about $1.4 million increase. Pilots, we are expecting to see a light increase in there because some added solar fields this year, so we're going to have some increase in payments from them. State aid, as I mentioned in the past, we were anticipating a decrease in state aid on the runs because we're seeing a decrease in debt service. So that actually is a net neutral impact in that regard. So that 1.7% decrease is actually anticipated, and you'll see the expense side on that side of the budget decrease as well. Miscellaneous, as I mentioned, I haven't increased yet. We're going to be looking into that in the coming weeks. And as was mentioned in the reports, it's really important to look at fund balance and reducing our reliance. So currently I have no dollars allocated from fund balance into next year's budget, and also a more conservative amount for the revenue side. So if you're looking at this year's budget, which is $61.2 million, and if we were to take these revenue numbers as fact, then that would essentially mean that we have to reduce our expense budget by $4.1 million from the current year. So that would bring us down to a lower number of $57 million. A lot of work to be done in terms of the budget in the coming months. This month of January has been a chance to gather a lot of information, and then February is going to be a very busy month in terms of figuring out where we're going to be expense side and revenue side. So the budget continues. As I mentioned, we're expecting $2.6 million increase in expenses at the moment. That's with everything in the budget, with some adjustments to some of those non-staffing expenses. But the revenues are expected to decrease by like 6.7%. That does result in a budget gap with about $5.7 million at the moment. As we get closer to February break, the time becomes more important to really look deeply into the revenue and the expense side of the budget. So we're going to look at those independent report recommendations. We're going to take the stakeholder feedback that's been gathered. We're going to look at all the non-staffing expenditures more closely. And then we're going to look at our end-of-the-year fund balance projections as well as reserve balance projections to see how we can utilize those to help offset some final budget gaps. And then we'll have a better sense of state aid and especially the tax levy limits for next year. As we continue to next year, just a reminder that we do only have a small part of the budget if we continue as we are with some flexibility. So for instance, 92.6% of our expenses are debt service, BOCES, payroll, and benefits. That's our biggest part of our expenses. We do some room in the BOCES services to take a close examine in terms of what we're taking from those services. But as we reduce those services, we're also reducing aid for future years. So that's something we're considering as we're going forward. If you look at the current budget right now, just debt service, BOCES, payroll, and benefits, those three categories, that is $57.6 million, which is very close to that number that we have for the revenue budget right now. So essentially, everything else, we don't have any room in the budgets to have utilities, contractual, HVAC system maintenance upgrades, all those pieces. We don't have room in the budget. So that's why we're going to have intensive discussions at the district level to see how we can bring that into line. BOCES final services, those are due April 10th, so we do have work on those. Currently, we were able to this year save in some of our special ed costs, so we are actually able to bring our current year BOCES bills down. So if you're looking at from this year budgeted to next year, we actually are seeing a slight decrease in BOCES services, about $136,000. And now that all the requests went in December, we now have the final rates coming out anticipated in the coming weeks. So we'll be able to see where those rates are and finalize what we really want to do in terms of BOCES services next year. Staffing is going to be a big conversation in terms of January, February, March. It's going to be an important conversation with the administrative team, with the board, and we're going to look at that closely. Insurance premiums, right now, liability, that's with the UGA. We're currently assuming a 15% increase in premiums, but we're still waiting on those increases in the budget. We are expecting some utility increases. We do have the NISMIC agreement that renews for full 3-year terms starting this April, so rates are going to go up a little bit starting this April for a period of 3 years, but they'll be the same rates for a 3-year period of time. And then tax levy is due March 1st, and then we'll look at the state aid runs. Ultimately, the question is, where's the legislature going to end up in terms of the budget? So some key takeaways. There's still a lot of refinements in the expense and revenue side of the budget. Current budget gap is $5.7 million. But that, as you can see from the budget workshop we had, which was over $7 million at that point in time, it does get reduced with some closer analysis, right? So this year's true budget gap, we were developing this year's budget, started off at $5.2 million, it got to $4.4 million. We're using the fund balance and reserves to cover that $4.4 million gap for this current year's budget. Next year's true gap, if you take the reserves piece out of that, if you assume a $0 increase, it's really a 6.3% budget cap, but again, we're anticipating some reserve usage, so it is closer to 5.7 at the moment. And then it's important to note that we're unable to use those savings to offset expenses, but that amount that we have to reduce expenses, which is going to have to happen this year, is still to be determined based upon a lot of budget work that's going to happen in the coming weeks. And it also assumes that we have a successful 7.5% tax levy override as well in this budget. So as you imagine, that 6.2 number can go up to $7 million. In terms of the payroll benefits, just a reminder that as staff salaries increase and the percentage of the payroll contributions increase, that does escalate in terms of the increase in expenditures for the benefit side. And then for the governor's budget, we're expecting a 1% due minimum increase. So it's a lot of information. Any questions on where we are right now?
After listening to the last presentation, how is that information being looked at on all of these things that you have been doing that? Like, who is actually analyzing what suggestions they have for us? And are we truly going to take, I mean, we spent the time and money to have them look at that. We really need to look at what we're doing. So how is that playing out? Like, who is analyzing it and taking it to the stakeholders and doing all that? How is that playing out?
Try to speak a little bit to that, yeah. So we've already started to take some of those, like a high-level, short summary of those recommendations to the stakeholder group. We got some feedback from them about those recommendations. We're going to be bringing that to our administrative team to make sure we get their feedback about how to take those recommendations. And a lot of those recommendations are things that we were also thinking would be coming down the pike anyway, so we've already started doing a little bit of pre-planning in that regard.
At the last stakeholder meeting, at the tail end, they left a sheet on the table for each of the 4 groups of 4. when will the board get to see the compilation of their comments?
I'll talk about that in my cabinet updates tonight.
Pardon me?
I'll talk about it in my cabinet updates, but it's in board docs. It's in board docs right now. I'll talk about it in my cabinet updates, where you're going to see that information.
Chris, on that last, second to last slide, about like the staffing projections and all that, can you just like kind of give an estimate on the timeline that you're looking at? I just know it's going to be a sensitive subject for the district, and I just think it's only fair to kind of have an idea of when staff may hear whatever conclusions come from them.
Certainly. So I can share a little bit. I don't know if Bob or Joe want to share as well, but we are currently working with our administrative team, especially because a lot of the program review looks at efficiencies. We have to really know where we're going to be in terms of sections for class sizes. But our target is really early March to have that known, because March is usually the time where positions are open in other districts, so we want to make sure those staff members have the opportunity to find positions elsewhere if they're affected.
Known to the staff, not just...
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City School District Board of Education accepts the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a motion? Motion. Thank you. A second?
Second.
Pat? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? And next is personnel action. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City School District Board of Education approves the personnel action as presented. Do I have a motion? Motion. A second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. Old business. The Board of Education meeting dates for the 2025-2026 school year has been adjusted. That was all in our notes today. To be it resolved by the Board of Education, Cortland Enlarged City School District, County of Cortland, New York, to approve the adjusted board meeting dates for the 2025-2026 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, again? And Sherlyn? Yep. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Moving onward. Under new business, we have the new course proposal for the Makerspace Lab. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City Schools District Board of Education approves the new course proposal Makerspace Lab as presented. Motion?
Motion.
Gavin? A second? Thank you. Shirley? All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? And the next is surplus items. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City School District Board of Education approves the request to surplus items as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Joe. A second? Thank you, Brett. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? 9.3, acceptance of the 2024-2025 extra classroom activity funds financial report. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the audit committee to accept the 2024-2025 extra classroom activity funds financial report as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Sherlyn. Second? I'll second it. All in favor? Discussion. What's that? Discussion. Oh, sorry, went right by that. Discussion.
Yeah, I thought you said that all the clubs were in the positive.
Yes, at the moment, yes.
But I thought on this report, it shows more than the negative.
That's because that was a last year finding at the June 30th of 2025. In that time period, there was a negative balance. But since in this year it has been corrected, it's now positive.
And because the recommendations that they come up with have been the same throughout the last 6 years pretty much, I'm still going to make a pitch that I really wish we would start going towards some kind of a QuickBooks recording thing, which would get rid of those things that they think we should get rid of, and would also be a life skill. So I really hope we can move away from the notebooks and get a life skill. So that's the end of that pitch.
Anyone else? All in favor? Louder. Thank you. Opposed? Abstaining. 9.4, the acceptance of the 2024-2025 extra classroom activity funds. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the audit committee to accept the corrective action plan for the 2024-2025 extra classroom activity funds financial report as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion. That was Brett.
Who's that? Brett. That was Brett. A second?
Second.
Caroline. All in favor? Oh, any discussion? Sorry about that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Acceptance of the 2024-2025 single audit. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the audit committee to accept the 2024-2025 single audit report as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Joel. A second?
Second.
Who's that? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. Extra classroom quarterly report. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City School District Board of Education approves the extra classroom quarterly report as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Sharon. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Gavin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. 9.7, an addendum to the employment agreement between Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, and the Board of Education of the Cortland Enlarged City School District. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Cortland Enlarged City School District approves the resolution approving an addendum to the employment agreement of the superintendent, Robert Edwards, as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to table this until our president of our board is here, because he had some input to give to the rest of the board members.
Okay, thank you.
If there's any way we could table it just till next month.
Yep. Yep, okay, thank you. Anyone else?
To table it, there needs to be.
Pardon me?
I'll let you know. And I am there.
Okay.
Need a motion to second. And then a vote.
Okay, any other discussion?
There was, the board members are discussing as well, rather than having this potentially completely postponed conversation to the next board meeting and holding everyone in limbo for a month. At our committee meetings, possibly following our committee meetings, we're discussing about getting together then to continue discussions.
That was an I wonder, to do it on the next Tuesday,
After all the special
just to do that and then move on into that next group.
And that would be if all of us would make it at that date. Yeah, it needs to be all board members need to be present.
Correct.
I just don't understand. Are we talking next Tuesday or the committee meeting?
The
Committee meetings, right?
the committee meeting, okay, that we would do that.
It would be following the second, what would it be, 6 to...
6 to 6.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And that would need to be brought in, we discussed it, so, because I'll make time to make sure that we'll come in,
So do we have to change our motion to, I mean, do we want to change Joe's motion to, well, we still have to,
Still has to be tabled.
we still have to.
This was a motion, that's just a recommendation.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. All right, 9.8, approval of CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved upon the recommendations of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland Enlarged City School District Board of Education approves the CPSE recommendations as presented. Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion.
Second.
And Sherwin. Okay, any discussion?
I have a request. In the report that we got tonight from our consultants, it talked about special education. And it brought out the fact again, that because we have 3 target schools, we are a target district. And because of that, and because in the spring of last year, there was a special education quality assurance committee that was in the district, and they had a report, and they had recommendations, and they had 5 dates where reports had to be sent to the state. Now, as overseers on the board, we don't say how things have to be done, but we say goals need to be met. And there was a report due June 27th, August 1, September 5th. And when the first request to get those, that was made in October. Well, since then, there's been 2 more, December 5th and December 19th. And I feel very strongly that the board should see those reports, because we should have oversight over our classification as being a district target for special ed. So I'm going to request and take this opportunity to do it again, that we see all 5 of those. And I know that there was something submitted on December 10th maybe, which said a third party was going to evaluate the progress. I didn't want to evaluate the progress, I want to read the reports, and I think all of us should.
Is that related to anything to this agenda item?
It's related to special ed.
But not this agenda item? I think that's just a general discussion item, it sounds to me.
This was my opportunity to say it, and I've said it, and I really think we should get those documents.
Okay.
I have a question for you. I don't understand how you got a report from it, because that was not in that whole questioning.
Pardon me? The report was in our board packet.
But the report,
If I can help us move forward, so this is unrelated to this agenda item, but we can talk to Lori's question. Kristen has a report that she'll provide to the board tonight. That came, and this could have, this could have come in a pre-question that we could have prepared for as a group. I've given Kristen a heads up.
Yes.
But Kristen, but it's not related to this agenda item, certainly. And Kristen can provide some information. She's prepared for that tonight. And I've put the FS10s that you asked for, they're emailed to everybody, also in board docs. So everybody can look at those as well. Unrelated to this particular agenda.
correct. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? 9.9, approval of financial reports. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Mr. Robert Edwards, Superintendent of Schools, that the Cortland and Welsh District Board of Education approves the financial reports as presented. I have a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Brett.
Second.
Thank you, Shirley. All in favor?
This is a discussion.
Oops, any discussion?
Under the budget transfers, I was under the impression that salary's pretty consistent. You know what it's going to be and you budget for it. It seemed this time that there were a lot of transfers for salary. Was that overtime or?
We pulled from operations salary to cover some expenses in the first transfer you see, but the real salary transfers between salary codes was the second one, which was only $11,000 between lines. And a lot of that is because staff are resigning, leaving, coming on board to fill those positions, so there's a gap in salaries in where those are. So it's typical we see some transfers between salary
It just
lines.
seemed like there were a lot more, and we've been talking so much about what we budget for salaries. It seemed.
So as we look at the budget this year, we do have to pull from some salary lines that we're not able to fill. So for instance, $80,000 from operations. We don't have all of our cleaners hired just yet. We're using substitutes, so we sometimes have to pull from that line to cover another line in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. Leadership reports. Do any members of cabinet have information that they'd like to share tonight?
I will quickly, for the teaching, learning, and collaboration, I have a celebration from our high school. I wish Principal Cornish were here with us, but I know Avery would have been impatient at this point. So for our January Regents Week, we had a 93% pass rate for ELA in January, so that's excellent for us. Very good news. Also, we had many students that passed algebra and U.S. history that had previously failed in June. And so that means that they were able to pass without the low pass option. So that's also a great celebration for us. So overall, it was a successful January Regents. As much as it can be when the rest of the building is still in existence as a school, and yet Regents are happy. So it's always a tricky time of year, and everybody did a great job, all hands on deck at the high school. Other celebrations, we continue throughout the district to celebrate a lot of learning growth. We've seen particular growth at the pre-K through 2. Each of the grade levels are noting significantly higher levels of students reading on grade level at this point in the year, which is more unusual. We've got 72%, I believe it was 72% at the
first grade, in the 60s for second grade. So these are, and as the year goes on, the probes that we're using get more complicated. And so to have that at this point in the school year, really a success and something that we should celebrate for our learners over at Berry and all across the district. So that's all. What probe do you use? We use the Orff probe, so right now it's a Dibbles passage, but it's not the Dibbles itself, we're using it as oral reading fluency.
So it's a fluency number, not a comprehension?
Correct.
Are we measuring comprehension also, or?
We are not for the monthly probe, what we are is informal and common formative assessments.
What do you attribute to that improvement in the pre-K through 2?
I think that there's been a lot of culture shifting at Berry and at Parker. When I say Berry, I do mean Parker also because they're split up obviously this year, but and a lot of adult learning and a lot of adults who are feeding up the adult learning, who are really, really excited about changing and improving practices, a lot of collaboration, a lot of looking at student needs and just how can we get this done? How can we support all of our learners? So a real shift in that and an excitement. And, you know, Mr. Edwards and I were at Berry one day and one of the teachers, one of the second grade teachers popped her head out the door and was so excited to tell us what her proficiency level was. So there's just a real excitement about how students are progressing and a real celebration about that and seeing the things that we've been doing this PLC journey for quite some time, and to be able to see the wins now that are finally coming through and being able to see the excitement is really paying off. And I think our staff and our students who are aware of it also are really excited about it.
That's awesome. So those are just the things like I think as a board, just as we go out to the public with like the budget this year, like those are the things we need to highlight, because if cuts are made, it could go towards programs that have contributed to student success. So those are things we have to consider when we go out there. It's great news.
Okay. So you'll see in the content there is the notice of compliance, which Lori, you were referencing. Just to clarify, there are reports on those dates. Those dates were checkpoints to submit documents. So those are student IEPs that they were reviewing to confirm that we were on track. So then that final report is the one that confirms, yep, you met the checkpoints, everything is then the folks being compliant. In terms of other things happening in special ed, we have our annual review starting. We shared some opportunities with families so that families have some resources to engage in meaningful ways. We have partnerships with the Mid-State Regional Partnership, doing some parent offerings. What is the IEP and specially designed instruction? These sessions are specifically for families, just so that they do feel that they have the tools and just the resources to participate. Our Unified Bowling team has started up, so we have a couple home matches coming up Monday, February 9th and March 2nd, which those are at Cortland. We also have some adaptive phys ed opportunities with City Cortland that are available to our students, and lots of just partnerships with local, the college and with the state.
Awesome. Thank you.
We've got a few updates on my end. As I mentioned in the report, one thing we should really be doing is looking at state aid runs and make sure we're maximizing that. Last meeting I did mention we had questioned our BuzzFeed state aid plan. They're based in the Albany area. They came and looked at our state aid and they determined that we are maximizing as much as we can. We did find a few things in terms of the high cost aid that we can tap into, as well as some other miscellaneous revenue as well that we can tap into. And from then we are able to increase this year's budget for revenue coming about $180 at least $200,000. So appreciate the well thought time for them to come down and help us out. So we're going to take that and move forward to next year's budget as well. Second update, I'm pleased to announce that the NYSERDA Energy Manager grant has been approved. We haven't officially received the approval letter yet, but we've essentially been given the go-ahead, which means we can post for an energy manager for a 3-year period of time. So we're working on how to implement that. You'll get more updates in committee meetings and at future board meetings where we are with that particular thing. Stakeholder meetings, they're all underway. We have one more meeting left. The plan right now is to take the feedback that's been gathered, and the district administration is going to put, with my lead, a draft fiscal strategic plan together for their review and their inputs to see what we can do moving forward in the next 3 to 5 years. As I mentioned earlier, in the cabinet report under exec content, I did add those handouts that were completed by those stakeholders at the last meeting. So if you want to see the feedback they already provide, that's available to you in the exec content in board docs tonight. Also, in the audit committee minutes, we did go through some RFPs, proposals for new auditors, for internal auditors. We did select Bonadeo as our next auditing firm for internal auditors. I've already started to reach out to them. They're excited to work with us into the future. And I've already let the other firms know that we are not going to be continuing with our current firm, as well as they didn't be successful in those proposals. So we're excited to work with Bonadeo. The last thing is just make sure we talked about tonight at the workshop we had recently. It was proposed that maybe we have a second workshop. So I'm hoping tonight at some point we can have a discussion in conjunction with the special board meeting I was mentioned earlier, and see if we can have a second board workshop, because I think the board input, especially with the revenue, the fund balance, reserves, and the tax levy increase, are definitely things I want to make sure we are including in the budget, and we need to have more discussions on those. So maybe tonight we can have a discussion at board.
Do you have a date for that last stakeholder meeting?
February 12th.
February 12th. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Just a couple things on my end. A couple weekends ago, Julie and I, Cy was also there. We were up at North Syracuse for first leg of league competition, and 3 of our teams went there. I hope you all put your hopes and dreams together for next Friday as we travel again. 2 of our teams travel again up to Buffalo. And last year we traveled in a blizzard both ways, up and back. So we knocked on wood that won't be those conditions this year, but our junior high team and one of our Randall teams qualified for Buffalo again. So we're pretty darn excited for that. So we're full on in preparation and making plans for our teams to head up there. So keep your collective cheers together for them as they go up there next Friday night, February 6th, for competition on February 7th. And last year we had to leave before the end of it because of the weather. But this year I will be there for the whole thing and see how our teams do. They're pretty darn excited and pretty pretty prepared for it. Julie had the opportunity this year, so Julie and I volunteered. Cy was sort of a runner, right? So Cy was moving teams all over all day long. That was busy action. Julie served as a judge, so she got to see what behind the scenes the presentation format of the competition feels like. And I was out also helping teams get to their places. So it's a pretty unique event, and we're pretty excited for those teams. So wanted to give them a shout out and cheer them on. That's it for me.
Wonderful. Okay, do any board members have information to share tonight? Okay.
So in that, we had a discussion item around the annual meeting. So if you saw it in the notes, annual meeting, which is really our budget vote. So this is based off of our budget workshop, and the idea is that we were talking through that night on the budget vote day, and we just needed clarification on that. Alicia and Chris really need sound clarification so that we know which direction we're headed, because that turns into quite a labor-intensive thing from this moment forward. The question I think in front of the group is, when we think about polling sites or a site, in our budget workshop, we talked quite a bit about having a polling site be the junior, senior high school. and having that polling site, be parallel with some activities that we would have throughout the day and through the evening. At that time, we talked about, having that polling site and having Virgil be a polling site. And I think the question is, we still had some question marks around whether we would do that or just have that single polling site being the junior senior high school. So I think that's the question that Alicia and Chris really need to land on. And tonight, we would need to land on that tonight.
Want to have a discussion about it?
Yeah, I think we need to get to that place.
So the two suggestions are up at the high school and Virgil, or are you saying just at the high school?
I think those are the two.
I just want to make sure that
I think that's the decision point. And Alicia just needs that, and Chris, just so they can really start their planning at this point. And I think through that workshop and through some other means, you all have, there's pros and cons. But we need to land there. If I were to make a recommendation, I would say we should go to one polling site. I would say for a couple of different reasons. We're one district, many school districts, happen that way and don't have multiple polling sites. I think that also makes the transition that we would be having this year from the 3 sites to the one that helps Alicia and Chris to execute what that will look like. Obviously, even at the junior, senior high school, there's a lot involved in what that would look like. That polling would happen during part of a school day. So if it's 11 to 8 or a 12 to 9 voting time, whatever that is, there's a school day that's involved in part of that. And I think that just, if we're a single site, that puts our energy toward knowing what that single site's going to be. So that's my 2 cents.
Has the mailing list been checked to see who gets the little notices about the budget?
That's something we're going to work on with the post office to clean that up. There's only so much we can do in that regard because they set it by their postal routes. But we're going to look into that this year prior to sending out newsletters.
Who addresses those?
We get a list of all the routes that are in Cortland city residents, but some of those routes do have some Cortland, some driving residents, right? Some routes only have 2 Cortland residents that they might be missing from the list. We have to make sure we have those on our list.
Yeah, because I know that Virgil felt like they had been kind of abandoned at the last budget vote because they didn't get the information. I think this will make them feel even more abandoned.
So, can we start this end, go around, get your thoughts?
I am concerned that going from 3 to 1 might cut down on the number of people that I'm thinking because of I love the idea of having it up at the high school, but logistically for some people it may be harder for them to get there, so having a second polling site might be useful.
Okay. I'm in agreement.
Are there any concerns about staffing and having people on site? Can we make it happen? If there was a second site, that's not an issue.
What would that, so if we have a second site at Virgil, that would be just Virgil voters. So that would, separate them from the rest of the school district. And then Cortland, the city of Cortland will vote at the high school.
So only vote at the
See, we would take, if we had one, we would take all of our voters. They'd all be on one list, they'd all be Portland city voters, or some school district voters.
Is there concern about confusion with that?
I don't think so, because it would just, the Cortlandville and the Cortland city list would all be just one list. The Virgil list remains the Virgil list. But Alicia, again, needs it just because she has to organize the poll.
Right, that was my initial question, was we'll be fine with poll workers if we do a second option?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah? I think we should have the 2. I think we should recognize Virgil and their accessibility to a nearby polling place.
Okay, Joe?
I feel the same way. I think we're going to lose some votes if we only have a place to vote down here. You know, a lot of people in Virgil might not even make the trip down to vote. That's my own personal opinion.
Can I get you?
I agree with Lori and Joe. We're going to lose people from Virgil. They're just not, they won't come in.
Can you only get an absentee ballot for medical?
Not anymore.
So if older people felt that they had been left out, they could vote by absentee ballot?
Or early mail voting, so we have two options.
Just a thought.
So we're going to 2, it sounds like?
It sounds like that. It sounds like that. And I think that's, we just need that, and then we're gonna go. We'll plan and move. And I think, you know, that this would give us the run to do it, and then, you know, maybe next year it becomes a conversation again, right? We're gonna learn, you know, whether the junior, senior high school, how it works. We will learn that this year for sure. And hopefully we have some good success with that, you know, being a polling site. So it sounds like consensus generally. We'll go with 2. Okay, perfect. We got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move into 8 or 12 to 9? I would recommend 12 to 9, just because of the school day.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
And I do recommend if we can try to make it as easy for people to get in and out. That's my biggest concern about having it there is sometimes people just want to vote, get in, get out, and they don't want to have to walk the far away. So I think we really have to be considerate about where it's housed so it's not tough for some people to get in and out. And, you know, I am concerned with school going on and finding parking, so I hope we really look at that.
Yeah, because like City Cortland does a really good job of doing general election with their PR, so it can be done in a busy environment.
Well, I'm not saying it can't be, I'm just saying let's be intentional.
We just have to make sure we do it ahead, we have it planned ahead of time. They've planned and failed a couple of times over there until they've got it flowing pretty well. So, you know, because that is essentially in the middle of a City Cortland parking lot, they are able to make sure that they have the closest walk to the pole and to the doors and things of that sort, and have all that parking's all blocked off.
If any class needed a fundraiser, a spaghetti dinner that night wouldn't be all that bad.
Should we have like student council kids available to help people in and out or whatever?
Every thought we can think of.
Yeah, I think we'll make it as easy as possible because if not, people will get frustrated and decide not to vote.
And that's the part of being in high school, it makes it easy for
junior, senior high school.
Yeah, a quarter of our staff. Yeah.
They just can't take their picture. You can't take your picture in the polling.
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay. Student ex officios. Aiden, would you like to go first?
Absolutely, thank you.
Oh, I know I have it here somewhere. Thank you.
So for our January report, we have a lot of information gathering to come in, but first I'd like to start off with the random middle walkthrough that me and Ms. Reynolds took January 8th, 2026. We took a walk through the school. It was a pretty good day out for that. And we took Justin, our AV specialist, with us for the weekly blast. Students of both 5th and 6th grade were very excited to be on camera. They were very jumpy at that one. And we were able to get them to share their hopes for 2026 and their New Year's resolutions. Everything was going well. We kind of stopped in during lunchtime and kind of blew that up a little bit. That happened. And yeah, so I'm going to hand it off to Cy to talk about our upcoming enrollment survey. We're working with Ms. Thornton.
All right, so I have a working with this course to get a survey out to all the families who choose alternative enrollment for their children, so I guess homeschooling, one of the bigger ones. And the goal of the survey is to gauge why the families are not enrolling their children in Cortland, and to see if there's a way we can potentially address that, address their concerns and change something. So I would think that Cortland would be a good idea. And the results of this survey are expected to be finalized by the February 8th.
How are they being distributed? By mail or by email or?
They're currently digital, but we're looking into alternative ways as well for our community members who do not have such
access. Good. You guys are running past everything.
Definitely.
So finally, this month wasn't super eventful, so we focused mainly on planning, especially for our upcoming enrollment survey. That was a big thing that we're trying to look at to see if there's any way that we can get some of those students to maybe consider coming to Cortland. And that's pretty much all we have for you for January.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Alicia, are there any requests to address the board?
Yes, down to responding to public comments, budget.
Sorry to bother you again. The first 3 points again. One was I was volunteering in the high school and just wanted to make a comment about the makerspace. I fully support Mr. Hare's initiative, but they use like hand sanders and things like that on plastic. So if at all possible, it would be wonderful if there were a dust collection system or a vent to the outside of the building so that, people don't inhale the dust. The person actually using the sander and all, and Mr. Hare, were using masks or ventilators, but I think it may be possible to run a pipe out through one of their walls and outside the building to get rid of the dust. Another was regarding Deb Ayers' recommendations. One of them for the facilities was to get rid of Parker as soon as possible. And while it is a cost to keep Parker, I really think it would be the best interest of the city to return it to the school district for $91 or less, and for the district to try or at least look into the possibility of using it for childcare. Supposedly, there is still the $1.2 million that Barbara Lifton got from the legislature as long as Parker is used for childcare. And the building, it'll take $1 million a year in maintenance. But with our building aid ratio, that'll be $100,000. $100,000 also for utilities, perhaps, at Parker. So just maintaining the building is going to cost $200,000. But the value of it would be to attract new families and to the district. If each kid gets $16,000 in foundation aid, it would only take about 12 or 13 additional students that you're attracting each year with good childcare, perhaps even free, depending on the state aid. Only about 12 or 13 students at $16,000 a head to cover the $200,000 operating cost of building. So that's my dream, that we could perhaps swing it so that we would get building aid for the building and make it possible to have real child care, universal child care. The third thing, I've been asking around too, and I turned up, I talked to Ashley Wilkes, who talked about, getting 5 days a week of hot meals at Parker. She's really angry because she didn't get the answer she wanted, that we could provide hot meals 5 days a week at Parker for the kindergartners. And she has 2 kids. She's talking about taking them out of the schools. And there's $32,000 right there. That's driver's ed. And if you multiply that by the number of years those kids will be in school, they're like a kindergartner and a second grader. Say you multiply it by 10 or 12, that should be enough to buy an oven or whatever that it takes to heat up the food. Not only that, if she felt some satisfaction that she complained and people listened to and did something, she might be one of our biggest cheerleaders. Said, I got this done, and she'd go out and people get more interested. Other people might come and ask for things too, but that might be a good thing, people are getting interested. So those are my 3 points for the end of the day. I hope everybody has a good rest of the evening.
Thank you. Okay. Looks like it's time for an executive session. In accordance with Public Law Officer, wait a minute. According with Public Officers Law, Section 96, Subdivision 1, I would like to call for an executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person and legal matters. Do I have a motion? Okay. Thank you. A second? What's that?
Yes. Second.
Yep. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? We will reconvene in open session.
And will there be anything that board just going to